Hello everyone, welcome to another deathmatch game, and today we have a rather interesting deathmatch, 2 versus 2, between the Code and Bad Trip versus Itchy for Mitchy and Brew. This is a very interesting matchup, as all of the matchups I try to post on here, because it's a Goth and Chinese war, where you have a Goth player on one team, or actually you have a Goth player on both teams, and a Chinese player on both teams. And the reason this is so interesting is because the Goths are the quintessential rush civilization and the quintessential archer counter civilization, whereas the Chinese are the one archer civ that still have the options to actually deal with the Huskarls effectively. A large portion of this comes from the fact that the Chinese start with 6 villagers, so they can actually get a good start that can defend against the Gothic rush. Early on, we can see the Code, who is our player in the blue, has gone for a bunch of champions and a little bit of cavalier opening, which is probably a good opening versus the Goths. His ally, on the other hand, who is playing as the Goths, has gone for a pretty standard 4 on barracks, the rest on houses, and get siege workshops up very soon, opening for the Goths. You do this because you want to create those Gothic heavy scorpions soon, because the Huskarl and other infantry plus heavy scorpion combo is very effective. Looks like most of the attention is coming up on the top though, as purple starts to raid green's base right here, and look at this! 2 villagers for Brew. His start is going to be significantly hampered by this. This is what we call a double team, where green decides to pay attention mainly to blue, and he gets destroyed for it. Green coming in with another wave, or purple coming in with another wave of Huskarls. He's going to try his best to destroy Brew's villagers. What is the deal, man? I guess he is creating them, but he's just lost so many to early raids, which is not what you want to see happen as the Goths. What you want to see happen with the Goths is, oh, look at this, look at this! He ungarrisoned all of these heavy scorpions in the blink of an eye to capture these infantry units off guard. This is going to be a nice defense for Brew because he's going to destroy these units and keep them from actually pushing. That was some good tactics right there. But he needs to delete the siege workshops, that way his Huskarls can path in and destroy the Chukanus. Chukanus are an interesting unit versus the Goths, because they're an archer unit, so they get countered pretty heavily by the Huskarls, of course. But if you add in some paladins or some cavalier like you see right now, the Chukanu can be an excellent support unit because they shoot multiple arrows, meaning they'll still deal good damage versus the Huskarls. Looks like both red and green are coming up, trying to defend green early, which is what you need to do if you're this low on villagers early, with some good scorpions in from green, and Chukanu and champions in from red. They're going to be here and destroy the meat shield from blue, so he needs to really try to keep the Chukanu alive. It's interesting to use archers, because they're a weak unit, in all honesty. They get countered by both siege and cavalry, but in this matchup, neither player has paladin or siege onager, so it's not that big of a deal. And if you can keep archers alive, you don't have to continually spend resources on making them, so your army can be bigger with the correct micro. So that's why archers can be strong if they're used correctly in the right situation. And I think Chukanu are the perfect example of this. We see another engagement right here where Blue, the Code, does not have units adequately defending his Chukanu. And unfortunately for him, he's just going to lose those. That was a little bit of a misplay on his part. And this just shows you that probably what he was doing is he was maybe building these town centers, or creating villagers, and in the blink of an eye, he lost a large portion of his army. Because red is double teaming blue right now, it's going to mean that Itchy for Mitchy is somewhat vulnerable at his base. We can see that he's coming out with the Chinese scorpions that have extra attack, but less range. He's going to try to use those to defend against these Huskarls. But purple already has the counter unit out, just predicting what his opponent's going to make with the onagers. The onagers will deal with these scorpions fairly well, and any Chukanu he makes, So that's the correct unit. But again, look at this. The Cavaliers coming out, which will be the counter to the Siege and somewhat to the Huskarls. So that's it's an interesting matchup. But it shows you that these players know the civs so well that you can predict. Hey, I'm an archer civ, so they're going to make archers, so I need to make cavalry. It just shows you what the right, correct thinking will do. In random map, you see like 1 or 2 and occasionally 3 unit combinations. But in deathmatch, you see a bunch of units used correctly. And what this does is that you have the resources and you don't have to spend resources researching technology. And as such, you can basically field whatever your civilization has available. And so we see the Chinese going for not only Cavalier, but also Chukonu, Champions, and Siege, which is the combination he needs to defend against Brew. However, he needs to use his army correctly and make sure not to take unnecessary shots with these Chukonu. Instead, it looks like he will use his meat shield well and defend against the infantry, but it's not quite enough, so he is forced to retreat to try to defend against these units. Again, doing what I said, keeping your Chukonu alive is so important because you don't want to spend the money to replace them. Down low, it looks like I missed an engagement, unfortunately, where Red lost a bunch of army. But it looks like he has an advantage. You just gotta patrol in your units, man. Destroy this castle, patrol in your infantry, and just create more of them. If we look at the resources for the players, looks like they're all starting to run pretty low on resources. Purple still has some gold in the bank he can use, but I'd probably actually use that on trade. Which, yeah, he's doing that. He's making some trade units. Which you definitely gotta think of the long game. Sometimes it's tempting just to make some more units to put on the field, but sometimes you just want to take your existing units, have them fall back, and make trades. That way you'll be able to sustain an army later. Up top, the Chukonu have been able to hold their own. The code's doing pretty well at keeping them alive versus Brew, and it looks like both players are just trying to mass up their armies. And this is something I need to get better at, is that I just sometimes spam my units into my opponents. And if I'm rushing, it works sometimes, but if I just trickle it in, oftentimes I lose more than I should. An engagement down here where if Red uses these rams adequately, he's going to be able to take out the heavy scorpions. But no, he just decides to patrol them into the castle, so they will die to the elite Huskarls. But again, I can see that this match is going to start to turn into a slugfest, where 2 people, they select a bunch of units, patrol them into each other, and hope for the best outcome. This is something that I think deathmatch players could get a little bit better on, is not necessarily microing your army, but just controlling it a little bit differently. So, making sure you have your support units in the front, making sure you flank a little bit better. These are things that I see deathmatch players not do that well. Up top, though, we can see a massive engagement where Green is pushing away Blue, killed all of his onagers right there, and these Chukonu are just defenseless. Again, if you're playing as the Chinese, you don't want to take onager shots like that, and you want to keep in champions, or preferably cavaliers, to defend your Chukonu. Cavaliers is actually my suggested unit of choice to make to complement the Chukonu, along with onagers, because they're both population-efficient support units, or complementary units, rather. And just making champions are good, but in a 200 pop game, you have to use all of that as perfectly as you can. Looks like he is at his population limit, though, which might contribute to why he didn't have the correct units out. So he's just going to patrol the units in and waste some units, it would seem, but he is lowering his population. So I think that is what you want to do so you can get new units out on the field and the correct units out on the field. I would definitely add more Cavalier, though. Down low, I don't know. These engagements down low I don't think are that interesting. There's no hills here, so it's really nothing that you want to take. You just got to try to keep players from taking these golds. That's really what you're fighting over, in all honesty. But it's just up here is where the interesting engagements are. We can see that Green has tried to take this hill with a castle, but it will get denied by these trebuchets. You want castles on hills because of the bonus damage, but also just to signify your presence, to say, hey, this is my land right here, and if your units try to patrol into it, they're going to get dealt some damage. And that also forces your opponent to stop and make a siege before you really attack. Again, we can see the Chinese coming in with their siege ram, and yes, this is what I want to see. Just move, it's a little move, just move your Chukonu back and then patrol them. So that way, these Huskarls, they're wasting all their time attacking these rams when they should be going for the juicy Chukonu. It's exactly what I want to see. It's just these little things. And just 5 Cavalier right here take out 2 Onagers, which saved a bunch of Chukonu. So I'm liking how the code is playing this right now, with his army composition and army control. But he is getting a little greedy, and he needs to keep these units alive and make some more rams before he can push. Down low, it looks like our Chinese player in the red, Itchy from Itchy, is pretty set at his heart on taking this one area. And in all honesty, that's a big mistake. In Deathmatch, you normally only want to push on the sides of the map and not on the middle. And the reason for this is that if you push into the middle, both players would be able to defend against that. So for example, if green sent a bunch of units right here into the middle of the map, both purple and blue could defend from that. However, this is a situation, in my opinion, where you just want to destroy the economy. So don't waste your resources right here. Instead, just take a bunch of Chukonu, march them in right here, and then march them out. I mean, with some rams, of course. Or even better, use Huskarls. But instead, Red has been wasting his energy just kind of going back and forth right here. Up top, some more engagements. Looks like the Chukonu, they could patrol right into the Onagers. Blue is, the code's going to lose some big amount of Chukonu right here. Some smart Onager shots. That's just so unfortunate. You know, you just patrol your units, and you come back a second later and you lose half of them. But again, he didn't completely Titanic. He still has a bunch of Chukonu right here. So things are going well, all things considered. It could have gone a lot worse, I'm saying. But this is the one thing I'm not understanding about the code, is why he's really making champions. Because if you make Cavalier, they're more population efficient, and they deal with these Onagers. I guess he making champions that way he doesn't have to deal with halberdiers, but sometimes you just gotta micro around the halberdiers or just take a few hits, because it's worth it to kill the siege. Looks like these trebuchets will set up just on the hill, so they will get an attack bonus, and this castle will start to go down. Pretty unfortunate for blue. Looks like green is finally being able to push, but green needs to use his resources. He's got about 1,000 food and 2,000 gold in the bank, so he just needs to use that in order to really defend. All you have to do is just spam from the barracks, which he actually is doing. I'm glad to see that. So you just gotta spam from the barracks, and this is a point where I would trickle my units in. What I would do is I'd double click on the Huskarls, press Q, and then patrol them in, and do the same with the Onagers. And then I just go through and rapidly tap my barracks hotkey, or I might just click and hold shift and do the create Huskarl hotkey, and just make a bunch of these and spam them in right here, so that way these units will die. But it looks like purple has come to blue's rescue with these elite Huskarls that will start to take out these units that are on the front lines. Nice save from him right there, and it looks like he can come in to do damage. The Huskarls will kind of fight Huskarls, kind of count Huskarls if you have more of them, so the Onagers in the back will deal some significant damage, taking out more of the Huskarls. And this kind of reminds me how I used to play the Goths. I used to do a really strong elite Huskarl and Onager combination. I've started to do more champion and elite and heavy scorpions because they're just so much easier to use, but I think I might start making a little bit more of these, now that I see how effective this has been when used properly. But this is one of those situations where you just gotta spam units, man. You just gotta spam units. And this is hard. This again shows how difficult, basically how much better Goths are on HD. Because in HD you have A, have multi-queue, and B, you have 300 population. Those are basically the standard HD settings. And with those settings, it's far easier to spam units. Looks like purple is coming in though, and he could start to take out this part of green's economy, which is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Down low, we have a few units here taking out the trade. That's going to get cleaned up, no big deal. But this is what I wanted to see earlier. Just take out the exposed areas of your opponent's base. Like, see these 20 Huskarls right here? They're doing more than all the Huskarls that green had up here, because they're actually accomplishing something. If you look at green's point of view, he's down to 70 villagers. Look at all that farm space lost. And this is a major blow for the Goths, because the Goths need that food to create their more villagers, and they need that food to create infantry. So this little bit of a double team right here has been very strong, because purple has been able to kill economy here, while blue has forced green to still engage up here. Down low though, it seems that red has his heart set on taking this portion of the map, because he does see that green is preoccupied up here, and so he's just going to come down and take control of this area right here, and he wants to finally set up inside of this trade. This castle will be a doubt castle, it will be denied before purple can just rush it up. So this just shows you the power of a preemptive castle, so to speak. It seems that red definitely wants to kill some trade right here. And that's going to be pretty painful for purple and for blue. However, they are dealing their damage themselves, destroying these castles and town centers, destroying all these farms, and this farm economy up here. So both players, this seems to be something that I've noticed happens quite a lot in deathmatch games, where you just say, screw it, I'll ignore the fact that you're attacking me, and I'll just go attack you somewhere else. And whoever has the better engagements is gonna win. But if you look at just the amount of damage done, I'd have to give this one to purple. Down low, that's a bunch of trade killed, but the Huskarls and the Onagers are coming in. And look at this, this shows you the power of Chukonu. That they were just patrolling here, probably not being used by Itchy for Mitchy at all, Microed rather. But the Onagers come in, and they get some shots off, but they were killed relatively soon. As I'm saying this, I don't know, this is kind of awkward. And look at this. This is a play I think we should have seen about 2 minutes ago from purple, where he deletes his markets. This brings me to something I see from a lot of new deathmatch players, which is one of the worst mistakes they make, which is you destroy your opponent's markets. Don't do that. Instead, take your Chukonu and just patrol them into the middle of your opponent's trade. What this does is see these trade carts? Like 5 of these trade carts are more expensive than all of those 3 workshops, or the 3 markets rather, that were destroyed. Like right here, he destroyed thousands of resources worth of trade, and it's going to take tons of gold for the players to recoup them. Right here, the same thing happened, and if he had deleted his markets earlier, the trade would have just actually bunched up and stopped flowing, keeping red from destroying so much of it. Up here though, the fact that both the trade and green's food economy has destroyed has made him go down to 66 population, and it has allowed blue, with his relatively small army, just to kind of waltz right in here, destroy all of these military buildings, and really deal a fatal blow, in my opinion, to green. If you look at the populations, both Itchy for Mitchy and Brew are under 100 population, but the other 2 players are above 100. Purple was struggling earlier, and it looks like he's lost a good portion of his economy, but he's still at 90 villagers. So if you just literally go to your town center, press and hold shift, tap A, do the same a couple more times, that problem right there is solved. Looks like players, that's funny, they're recreating their trade routes, and Bad Trip and the Code are talking to each other in Turkish, I believe. So I know the Code is Turkish. I don't know about Bad Trip, though. But again, this just shows you how important it is to take the correct engagements. Because all game, Red was like, oh yeah, I can spend all these resources and just push in right here. And he eventually did do that, but it took him all game, and what did he get for it? Like, almost no economy was destroyed. Whereas Purple was fighting that and just decided, hey, what the heck? Let him kill my base right here. Instead, I'm going to go and absolutely destroy Green's economy. And he did that, and just look at this. Green having to rebuild, only at 46 villagers. It's just not really sustainable. And this game is over. The code does need to do better, though. I mean, just sell some wood right there, get some rams, and push this area. Or maybe just create a few cavalier to defend these. But you can't idle your army like this, man. Just move it in just a little bit. You don't want to get cocky, you don't want to get over-ambitious, but you'd want to use your army. However, in my opinion, it was that one engagement where Purple just said, hey, I'll let Red destroy some of my buildings, but I'm going to really harm Green's economy, which would allow Blue to then come in and deal some major damage that won the game for those two players. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to share it and to subscribe, and I'll see you later.